Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Movie Morgue. I am your host, John Rochetter, for this segment. And without further ado, let's get this over with. 1987, not just the year I was born, but also one of the greatest cinematic sci-fi action horror movies to have ever happened, came out that year. A little film called Predator, directed by John McTiernan, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse the Body Ventura, and Shane Black. We'll get to him in a little bit. I've always had a deep connection to this movie. I've loved it ever since I was a kid, and I love it now. I watch this movie probably 3 or 4 times, give or take, every year. Ever since I was a kid, because DirecTV, cable television, streaming wasn't really a thing back then, I'm revealing my age, but I would constantly hone in on the TV guide every week just so I can find out if Predator was going to be on television at all during the week. Because I was obsessed. I thought the Predator creature was one of the most badass alien monsters we have ever seen. I've ever seen. I wanted to be the Predator. I wanted to be the guy that fought against the Predator. I wanted to have everything dedicated to this movie because John McTiernan created one of the best films of all time. And yes, it may be a product of the 80s, but it is an excellent product of the 80s that is still holding the test of time. And even if some of the special effects are a bit dated, most of them really hold up. That $15 million budget, oh my god. I could honestly talk about Predator for about an hour and a half. I could do my own audio commentary if I wanted to while the movie is playing in real time. That's how much I love this movie. That's how much it means to me, and that's how much of a connection I've had ever since my childhood. Predator 2 was actually the first movie I saw as a kid, because I was a little bit older, I was able to see it on television, or at least sneak it. It was rated R, and I wasn't allowed to watch rated R movies at the time, but that was the first one I remember seeing, especially that third act sequence with the Predator and Danny Glover. And watching it now, it's a big step down from the original, but I do really like it. There are some really good sequences, even if the script isn't all that good. The character development really isn't all that good. There's some very meh camera work, but some of it's very good. Some of it's very high-tech and professional. I thought Stephen Hopkins did a decent job with the movie, but he really nailed the first act. That's what got me invested. Yeah, and I was really looking forward to those Alien vs. Predator movies because I remember reading the comics and playing the arcade games and bowling alleys, and I was so on board with those movies. And I hate them. I absolutely hate those two movies. I don't want to really get that far into them. I just don't like them. They're not part of canon, and they shouldn't be a part of anything right now. Just leave it as comics. Just leave it as a video game, because that's where it belongs. Video games and comic books. Predators, that came out in 2010, that is easily the best sequel we've ever had in this franchise. Prove me wrong, but I think it's easily the best one, and I think what Predator 2 should have been. Because one of the issues that I have with Predator 2 is some of the casting decisions. I love Danny Glover. I love Gary Busey. I like Bill Paxton. I just don't buy for a second that any of those three are capable of going up against a Predator. A 7'2" muscle gargantuan with mandibles and high-tech weaponry. I don't buy for a second that those three could actually take down a Predator, even if it is in the concrete jungle of Los Angeles. The characters in Predators, I do believe. Mahershala Ali, Walton Goggins. Yes, I know Adrian Brody was putting on the Batman voice when it came to that movie, but I didn't really care because the movie itself is honestly what Predator 2 should have been. Which brings me to the topic of today's discussion. A film called The Predator of 2018. This was written and directed by Shane Black, who I love. I'm going to say this right now. I'm a huge fan of Shane Black. I think he is a very talented writer. I think he is an exceptional director. And as I mentioned before, he was in the original Predator film in 1987. He played the character Hawkins. He had those big glasses, and he was the funny guy that would tell jokes that would fall flat, but they make us laugh on the inside, and he just all around seemed like a decent human being. And I was absolutely thrilled to find out that he was going to be making a sequel, a continuation of the Predator saga. And I thought if there was anyone who could do a good job with this movie, it would be him. Because he understands the character. He was actually part of the script writing in the original 1987 Predator film. He would go on to write Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2, even though he doesn't care for that movie because a lot of his ideas were changed. He would make a lot of great movies down the road. He would make Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He would make The Nice Guys, which was one of the best movies of 2016. Now, when the movie came out in 2018, I'll be honest, I did not see it in theaters because I listened to the reviews, I read the critical reception, I heard that this movie was disappointing. So, I'll be honest, I stepped away from it. I did not watch it until a year later. So, yes, this is 2021 right now, and I watched this movie for the first time in 2019. And now that we have our channel, now that we have our offshoot segments, I wanted to be able to express my true feelings for The Predator of 2018. I have two questions. Number one, what in the hell did I just watch? And two, who in the hell is responsible for this fucking disaster? Is it Shane Black's fault? Is it the producer's fault? Is it 20th Century Fox not giving a shit because they realized they were going to be bought out by Disney, so they stopped caring about some of the properties that they were going to be releasing? I don't know. I wanted names. I wanted the names of people responsible for this film because that's how pissed off I was. What I do know is that the final product that we got was an absolute incoherent mess of a film with logical flaws, terrible characters, inconsistent script writing, a final 10-minute scene that had my jaw hit the floor in disgust. This movie has absolutely no narrative, and I knew that I was probably in trouble when I saw the opening title sequence. I knew right from then on that I was in for a bumpy ride, and I didn't want to believe it, but after seeing the entire movie, I realized that all the critics and all of the bad press that this movie got, everybody was right about this movie. And that really disappoints me because when I saw the cast photo, I was completely on board. I absolutely loved the people that they selected for this movie, thinking, all right, they are definitely trying to bring it back once again to its testosterone roots like Predators did in 2010, but I thought it was going to have a better script. I thought it was going to have a better story. I thought it was going to be the best Predator sequel and the best movie since the first one. I didn't think it was going to top it, but I at least expected it to be close to the same level of the first one. While Alien vs. Predator Requiem may have been rock bottom, this movie is not that far from that level. It's probably 2 steps above that disastrous sequel that's not part of canon at all. Let's go back to that casting for a second. As I said, when I got that photo, when the internet released that photo of those cast members in that ragtag picture, all of them geared up in military attire with their firearms and everything looking badass and macho, Boyd Holbrook, Keegan-Michael Key, Thomas Jane, Alfie Allen, Olivia Munn, Sterling K. Brown. A lot of great names were brought on board to this movie. Yet, I can't believe almost every character in this movie was just some weird amalgamation of Hawkins. Everybody had to have their quips and their jokes. They always had to tell one-liners. They always had to be the funny one. Why can't you just have one person be the funny one? If you just gave all the comedic material to Keegan-Michael Key, fine. Just do that. Have him be the Hawkins-type character and have everyone else be their own thing, except everyone's a quirk, but they have to be a funny quirk, and it's not even that funny. I love Thomas Jane so much, I can't tell you how disappointing and how pissed off I was with the character choices that he was given. He plays a dysfunctional lunatic with Tourette's syndrome. That's not funny. Are you kidding me? What in the hell made you think that was a good idea for him? Alfie Allen from Game of Thrones has virtually nothing to do in this movie except maybe flip around a couple deck of cards, and 50 Cent is putting out cigars on his tongue, and Sterling K. Brown is not taking this seriously at all. He thinks this entire experience is just one big joke, and that's probably the one thing I hated the most about this movie, is that it feels like one big, massive joke. It kind of reminded me of that ridiculous Aristocrats joke, that, the one that goes on for 10 to 20 minutes, and you're just waiting for the punchline to happen, and when it finally does happen, you forget that you're actually listening to a joke, and you're not even laughing. There's a bunch of death sequences that are actually played for comedy. One got a little bit of a chuckle out of me, but honestly, it's not really meant to be all that funny. And then there's one moment where an integral character gets killed in the blink of an eye. In fact, I had to hit the rewind button just to make sure that it was in fact that character that just died. It was so poorly shot, I'm not exaggerating. This entire film is a disaster. This movie broke my heart into a million pieces. It has permanently crippled the franchise for some time. It is easily the Batman and Robin of Predator. Yes, as I said, this is 2 steps above Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And those 2 steps, the only things I can figure out is that there is one suspenseful scene, and it's involving Olivia Munn's character, where she's in the lab coat, she's in the lab, and she's trying to go through this decontamination process, and she has to basically remove all bacteria. She has to remove her clothes in order for her to advance to this other room. As the Predator, the classic Predator, as he's coming out of its coma, he is wreaking havoc and killing a shitload of people in the other room, and it's making its way towards her. And at least they didn't fuck up the classic Predator. He looks as cool as he always has. The only issue I have with him is that there's a couple moments where they actually treat him like a caricature, where they try to give him some comedic bits. Again, I can't say enough how many times this movie tries to tell the audience that we're watching a comedy, when this movie should have never been a comedy from the start. It should have been taken seriously from the beginning, and this is why fans are pissed off at The Predator. The very first thing I did after I watched this movie is that I got to my laptop and I started working on a treatment and my own spec script of my own Predator fan-made film, in the vein of Predator 1718, a very short but memorable Predator comic that should have been a movie. In fact, it was discussed back in the 90s and it never happened. And I know there's a lot of treatments out there for their own fan-made Predator movies. It'll probably never get made. I don't care, because I am nobody. I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have powerful connections in Hollywood. The best thing I can hope for one day is that maybe I can get a fan-made trailer made. And that's fine. It was therapeutic, it was rewarding, and I guarantee you it was better than what we got in 2018. In fact, I've had enough. I know there's a new one coming out in the future by Dan Trachtenberg, the guy who directed 10 Cloverfield Lane. Talented director, but honestly, if this movie's any good, I'll believe it when I see it, because this movie let me down so much, and it has set the Predator franchise back 10 years as far as I'm concerned. I've had enough. I'm done talking about this movie. It belongs in the movie morgue, because this is where movies go to die, and this movie is dead, completely dead. You are one disappointing motherfucker. It does not have a cohesive narrative. It does not have a good plot. It has weak characterizations. It has a script that is all over the place. Way too many jokes. It does not take itself seriously. The CGI is atrocious. The Predator vision is atrocious. The only thing that looks good is the classic Predator. At least they didn't fuck him up, like I said. But they gave him some comedic moments, which they should have never done. The Predator dogs, the super duper big ultra Predator that you saw in the trailer, it's just as bad as you feared. It is easily one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and this is coming from the angry voice of one of the most dedicated and devoted Predator fanboys of all time. And that's all she wrote. Guys and gals, thank you so much for listening to this review/rant. I really hope that anyone out there who has never seen this movie, if you're thinking about watching it, maybe don't. Because seriously, don't. Once again, thank you for listening. That's all the time I have left. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay crazy.
Please somebody help me.
Oh yeah.